First of all, I would like to thanks to the grace of heaven, the virtue of our holy teachers, and the mercy of 老前人 and 前人, and Tao transmitting masters, and all of you to give me this opportunity to share the Great Learning 9 with you. This is the well-known 8 steps of learning from the Great Learning, presented from the bottom up. In the table, we can clearly see that 格物 and 致知 form the foundation of self-cultivation and guide how we interact with others. In our previous session, we completed the remaining part of Chapter 5, which focuses on 格物 and 致知. 格物 means to investigate things or eradicate desires, while 致知 means to extend knowledge or awaken the conscience. In addition, we also covered chapters 6 and 7. These chapters explore the third step of learning, making thoughts sincere, and the fourth step, rectifying the mind. Before moving on to today's topic, I'd like to quickly review them once again. Since 格物, 致知 are the foundation of the cultivation and the 8 steps of learning, I will spend a little more time to review them. The chapter 5 of the Great Learnings talks about investigating things, extending knowledge, which are the first 2, 格物致知, in the 8 steps of the learning. This is called knowing the root. This is what it means to extend knowledge to the extreme. Clearly, these 2 sentences do not convey any meaningful message related to the title of this chapter. This is because the original text meant to explain this section has unfortunately been lost over time. So Zhu Xi wrote a commentary on this chapter to try to explain these concepts in details. The above text is chapter 5 of the Great Learning, originally written by Zengzi to explain the meaning of investigating things and extending knowledge. But it has been lost over time. I will skip the remaining text as it was covered earlier, but please note that in his commentary, the Zhu Xi interpret 格物 as investigating things and 致知 as extending knowledge. We also discussed the 2 major schools in Neo-Confucianism, the school of principle and the school of mind. Their roots may actually be traced back to a single sentence from the doctrine of the mean. It says, therefore, a 君子, a virtuous person, esteems his virtuous nature and follows the path of inquiry and learning. This sentence gave rise to 2 different interpretations and 2 different approaches to self-cultivation. The school of principle, represented by thinkers like Zhu Xi, focused on the part that says, follows the path of inquiry and learning. They believe that by studying the world, understanding universal principles, and investigating things carefully, a person could gain wisdom and improve in self-cultivation. On the other hand, the school of mind, led by figures like Lu Jiuyuan and later Wang Yangming, emphasized esteeming one's virtuous nature. They believe that moral goodness is already present within the heart-mind. Instead of looking outward to study the world, one should look inward to awaken the original moral sense that is already there. In short, the school of principle looks outward to understand the world. The school of mind looks inward to understand the mind. Both aim for the same goal, virtue and wisdom, but take very different paths to get there. In fact, from the original text, we can see that both are essential and neither can be omitted. What is the true meaning of 格物 and 致知? Zhu Xi and Wang Yangming interpret them differently, and both interpretations make sense. Here, I adopt both, as I see no conflict between them. For 格物, there are 2 interpretations. The first is investigate things, or more specifically, investigate the principles of things. The second is eradicate desires, or more precisely, eradicate selfish desires. The first interpretation comes from Zhu Xi, while the second is from Wang Yangming. Similarly, For 致知, there are two interpretations. The first is extend knowledge, or extend knowledge to the extreme, which is Zhu Xi's view. The second is awaken conscience, which is Wang Yangming's perspective. We've discussed Zhu Xi's commentary on 格物 and 致知 earlier. To better understand the interpretation of 格物 and 致知 from the school of mind, I introduced the book 大学浅研新注, or New Commentary on the Great Learning in Plain Words. It is a unique Taoist reinterpretation of the Confucian classic, The Great Learning. It was composed in 1947 through the traditional Taoist channeling method at Qianyuan Tang in Xi'an, and the author is Lü Dongbing, a legendary Tang Dynasty Taoist immortal. This commentary is notable for its attempt to restore and explain the lost teachings on 格物 and 致知. To quickly review it, let's start from the beginning sentence of Patriarch Lü's commentary. To restore one's true nature, one must first eliminate selfish desires. This means that when greed and desire arise in the heart, one's nature deviates from the right path. When anger and hatred arise, one's nature becomes obstructed. When obsession and extravagance arise, one's nature grows restless. And when attachment and delusion arise, one's nature is led astray and altered. Patriarch Lü introduced an important concept, the impurities of the heart, 心物. When greed and desire arise in the heart, one's nature deviates from the right path. One must eliminate greed and desire to correct a deviated nature. When anger and hatred arise, one's nature becomes obstructed. One must calm anger and hatred to unblock an obstructed nature. When obsession and extravagance arise, one's nature grows restless. One must eradicate obsession and extravagance to stabilize a restless nature. When attachment and delusion arise, one's nature is led astray and altered. One must sever attachment and delusions to steady a wavering nature. To restore one's true nature, one must first eliminate selfish desires or remove the impurities of the heart, 心物. The impurities of the heart contains four things: greed, anger, obsession, and attachment, 贪嗔痴爱. There is a similar things in Buddhism. Three poisons in Buddhism, greed, hatred, and delusion, 贪嗔痴, are the three root causes of all suffering. They keep us stuck in cycles of frustration and unhappiness, and in the endless cycle of rebirth. Greed is the craving for pleasure, possessions, or power, leading to attachment and dissatisfaction. Hatred manifests as anger, aversion, or hostility, creating conflict and inner unrest. Delusion is ignorance of the true nature of reality, clouding judgment and sustaining false views. These three poisons distort our thinking, fuel harmful actions, and keep us suffering. But Buddhism teaches that we can free ourselves from them. Greed fades when we practice generosity and contentment. Hatred dissolves when we cultivate patience and compassion. Delusion clears when we develop wisdom and see reality clearly. In addition, Buddhist practice seeks to overcome them through precepts, meditation, and wisdom. 戒定慧, specifically, precepts counters greed, meditation calms hatred, and wisdom dispels delusion. By transforming greed into generosity, hatred into compassion, and delusion into wisdom, one purifies the mind and moves toward nirvana and lasting peace. Following are the texts discussed in my last lecture. Thus, eliminating improper actions is the path to awakening the mind's innate purity. People's hearts are easily influenced by external factors. The greatest fear is to begin diligently but end negligently, resulting in repeated improper actions. By constantly awakening the mind's innate purity, one can gradually restore one's true nature and ultimately attain the state of the saints. This shows that without eliminating selfish desires, one cannot truly restore one's innate conscience and true nature. This text here shows how sages can move toward the state of saints. A good start is important, but finishing well is what truly leads to sainthood. Making thoughts sincere lies in truly restoring one's true nature. When the heart is free from impure thoughts, it is called perfect harmony, the original state of conscience and true nature. When impure thoughts arise, it is called emergence, a state of confusion and chaos. Therefore, one must remain vigilant before impure thoughts arise and suppresses evil thoughts the moment they emerge. Only then can innate conscience and true nature be restored, enabling one to comprehend the highest truth. In the Confucian tradition, restoring one's true nature is central to personal growth and achievement. So, in this passage, it begins by saying, making thoughts sincere lies in truly restoring one's true nature. Hence, eliminating impurities from the heart to restore innate conscience is the cultivation of inner sainthood. Once this inner cultivation is perfected, even without deliberately making one's thoughts sincere, they are naturally sincere. Even without deliberately rectifying one's heart, the heart is naturally upright. Although there are 4 steps: eradicating desires, awakening conscience, making thoughts sincere, and rectifying heart, they are essentially 2, for human thoughts and intentions are both contained within the self. Thus, this also belongs to the cultivation of inner sainthood. This means that without truly restoring innate conscience, one cannot make their thoughts sincere. End of Patriarch Li's commentary. It emphasizes that the path of inner sainthood is a journey not about outward rituals, but about purifying the heart and restoring our true nature. Confucian learning teaches us that the most essential cultivation begins from within. To truly make our thoughts sincere, we must first eliminate the impurities that cloud the heart. Only when our conscience is fully restored can sincerity and uprightness arise naturally. To conclude, let's return to the 8 steps of learning. Among these 8, the most fundamental are the bottom 2, 格物 and 致知. As the patriarch insightfully explained, 格物 is not merely investigating things in the world. It means eradicating selfish desires, clearing the inner obstacles that cloud our true nature. And 致知, not just extending our knowledge to the extreme, is about awakening the innate moral conscience that already exists within us. These are not just steps on a ladder, they are the foundation. When these are firmly established, and when the heart is purified and conscience restored, then the next 2 steps, making thoughts sincere and rectifying the heart, happen naturally. No enforcement is needed. You don't have to try to be sincere. Your thoughts are already sincere. You don't have to rectify your heart. Your heart is already upright. This is what the patriarch called the cultivation of inner sainthood. It is about returning to our original nature, also called true nature, where sincerity and uprightness arise effortlessly, in harmony with the Tao. So let's not forget, what appears to be 4 steps are really 2, and the work begins within. This entire reflection is based on the patriarch's profound commentary, guiding us back to the root. 格物 and 致知 are where true cultivation begins. Next, I will quickly review Chapter 6, 诚意, making thoughts sincere. Making thoughts sincere means no self-deception. It is like hating foul smells and loving beautiful colors, all such feelings arising from the heart, with honesty and without deceit. This is true self-satisfaction. Therefore, a junzi, a virtuous man, must watch over himself when alone. In the great learning, making thoughts sincere means we must not deceive ourselves. This is more than simply telling the truth to others. It is about being truthful to our own heart. In addition, it says, a 君子, a virtuous person, must watch over himself even when alone. Why? Because that is the truest test of character. What we choose to do when no one else can see. The real you is who you are when no one is around. When petty persons are at leisure and alone, they may do all manner of evil. Yet, upon seeing a 君子, they feel ashamed, conceal their evil, and display their goodness. But others can see them as clearly as if their very lungs and liver were exposed. What good is concealment? This is called sincerity within manifests itself without. Therefore, a 君子 must watch over himself carefully when alone. Our inner thought cannot be concealed forever, especially when one is alone. What we think and feel will eventually show up in our words, expressions, and actions. Pretending to be good works only for a short time, because sincerity or insincerity has a way of revealing itself naturally. That is why the Great Learning says, sincerity within manifests itself without, and keeps reminding us, a 君子 must watch over himself even when he is alone. Zengzi said, when one is alone, it is as if 10 pairs of eyes are watching and 10 hands are pointing. How stern and awe-inspiring this is! The rich adorn their houses, while the virtuous cultivate their virtues. When the mind is broad, the body is at ease. Therefore, a 君子, a virtuous man, must make his thoughts sincere. The chapter 6 concludes, therefore, a 君子 must make his thoughts sincere. Making thoughts sincere means all the thoughts are sincere and truthful, no false thought. Sincerity is the root from which all virtues grow. Without it, we might look good on the outside, but feel restless and uneasy inside. With it, we can face ourselves and the world without fear. Every day, our mind produces many different thoughts. Some are good, helpful, and aligned with truth, while others are not and can lead us astray. In the practice of self-cultivation, we should pay close attention to our thoughts and focus on making them sincere and genuine. At first, it is natural to have many unhelpful or distracted thoughts. But with patience, reflection, and awareness, the number of good and sincere thoughts gradually increases. Over time, through constant effort, we can reach a point where almost all of our thoughts are virtuous and true. Cultivating this inner clarity and sincerity is the foundation for developing strong character, making wise choices, and living in harmony with our true nature. We also covered Chapter 7 last time, so I'll quickly review it, rectifying the mind and cultivating the self. The phrase, self-cultivation lies in the rectification of the mind, means when feeling angry, the mind is not rectified. When feeling fearful, the mind is not rectified. When overly indulging in pleasure, the mind is not rectified. When feeling anxious, the mind is not rectified. Self-cultivation is often seen as outward behavior or appearances, but it is not just about these alone. It begins with the mind. A mind that is clear, steady, and sincere allows us to act thoughtfully, respond appropriately to situations, and grow as a person in both character and wisdom. When the mind is distracted by these emotions, it is as if it were not present in the body. One may look, yet see nothing. One may listen, yet hear nothing. One may eat, yet taste nothing. Therefore, self-cultivation lies in the rectification of the mind. These examples show how a distracted mind disconnects us from reality and true nature. Even though our senses are working, we do not truly perceive the world around us because our attention is caught by internal turmoil. This is why self-cultivation begins with the rectification of the mind. Only when the mind is clear, steady, and sincere can we fully engage with the world, learn effectively, and act rightly. Now we will move to a new chapter, Chapter 8. It talks about cultivating self and regulating family. The phrase, regulating family lies in self-cultivation, means people tend to be partial towards those whom they love, partial towards those whom they hate, partial toward those whom they reveres, partial toward those whom they pities, and partial toward those whom they despise. This passage teaches that before one can truly manage a family effectively, one must first learn to correct oneself. It points out a deep human tendency bias, whether toward those we love, hate, respect, pity, or look down upon. Our emotions often cloud our judgment and lead us to act unfairly. In family life, this may show up as favoring one child over another, being overly harsh toward a spouse, or losing patience with parents when we feel misunderstood. Self-cultivation means learning to see these biases within ourselves and working to overcome them. It requires calm reflection and the ability to act from principle rather than emotion. In modern life, this idea is especially relevant. When we manage conflicts at home or at work, fairness and self-awareness are essential. A person who can recognize their own emotional reactions and correct them will create harmony, not only within their family, but also in all relationships. Thus, regulating the family begins with mastering the self by cultivating sincerity, fairness, and emotional balance in everyday interactions. I believe that all parents should love each child wholeheartedly. However, the ideal world is sometimes far from the harsh reality. Consider the following situation. If you have two children, one well-behaved and cute, the other stubborn and difficult, one academically strong, the other struggling, one gentle and considerate, the other bad-tempered, it is hard for parents not to be biased toward one of them. The relationships between parents and children then become intertwined with love and resentment, often continuing into adulthood. The children who are favored can suffer just as much as those who are not. In your daily life, are you biased, favoring or disfavoring someone? In your family or at work, if the answer to the above question is yes, according to the Great Learning, it is better to change your attitude and mindset soon. Otherwise, more and more troubles may eventually arise. This also applies to temple affairs. Treat people fairly and justly, regardless of whether you like them or not. However, sometimes, even if we treat people fairly, they may still think we are biased. How can we solve this problem? Do not be biased toward anyone. This is not easy, but it can be achieved through two key steps. 1. Self-cultivation. People naturally have biases toward those they love, dislike, respect, pity, or look down upon. These emotions often influence how we treat others. Sometimes we are not even realizing it. To cultivate ourselves means to become aware of these biases and to correct them through reflection and sincerity. When our hearts are balanced and fair, we can treat others with true respect and equality. This is the foundation of good communication and healthy relationships. 2. Communication. It is not enough to believe we are fair. We must also let others see and feel our fairness. When we interact with others, our tone, attitude, and actions should all show sincerity and impartiality. If people sense that we are open-minded and not biased, communication becomes smoother. Trust naturally grows, and harmony follows within our families, workplaces, and society as a whole. By cultivating ourselves and communicating with fairness, we bring the principle of regulating the family through self-cultivation to life. Therefore, it is rare in the world to find someone who, while loving someone, can still recognize their faults, or who, while hating someone, can still recognize their merits. As the saying goes, no one knows the faults of their own son, nor the fullness of their own crops. This shows that one who fails in cultivate oneself cannot regulate one's family well. This passage reminds us that true fairness requires clear judgment beyond personal feelings. Most people, when they love someone, overlook that person's faults. When they dislike someone, they ignore that person's strengths. Such bias clouds our understanding and affects how we lead or care for others. The old saying, "No one knows the faults of their own son, nor the fullness of their own crops," illustrates how attachment and pride can easily blind us. In modern life, this teaching applies everywhere in families, workplaces, and friendships. A parent who only praises their child but refuses to correct mistakes cannot truly guide them. A manager who favors some employees while undervaluing others will lose respect and balance in the team. Cultivating ourselves means training the mind to stay objective, to see both the good and the bad with honesty and compassion. Only when we can look at people and situations without emotional distortion can we manage our families and relationships wisely. True harmony begins when self-cultivation clears the lens of our heart. A child ran up to the mountain and accidentally shouted into the valley, "Hey!" As soon as the sound faded, bursts of "hey" came from all directions, as if the mountain were replying to the child. The child was surprised and shouted again, "Who are you?" The mountain echoed, "Who are you?" The child shouted, "Why didn't you answer me?" The mountain echoed, "Why didn't you answer me?" The child couldn't help getting angry and shouted, "I hate you." Very soon, the voice from all around was, "I hate you, I hate you." The child ran home crying and told her mother. The mother said to the child, "Go back to the mountain and shout, 'I love you,' to the mountain, and see what happens, okay?" The child ran to the mountain again. Sure enough, this time the child was surrounded by the voices of, "I love you, I love you." The child laughed, and the mountains seemed to laugh too. Sometimes we always complain that others' attitudes are too cold or distant, but we don't realize that we are each other's best mirror. If you encounter a similar situation, ask yourself what you have done to others. If you want others to treat you kindly, you must treat them kindly first. Even after we have cultivated ourselves and truly tried to be fair, some people may still think we are biased. When this happens, it's easy to feel frustrated or misunderstood. But this situation actually reminds us of two important things. First, misunderstandings can come from improper communication. Sometimes, even if our heart is sincere, our way of expressing it may not be clear. Maybe our tone, timing, or choice of words gives the wrong impression. In such cases, we need to reflect on how to communicate better, how to let others feel our fairness, not just know our intention. Second, such misunderstandings may also come from past or present karma. Perhaps we have unintentionally hurt or disappointed others before, and that impression still lingers. Or maybe it's the result of deeper karmic causes from previous lives. Whatever the reason, we should not let resentment or frustration grow. Instead, stay calm, sincere, and consistent in our actions. Continue to practice fairness with patience and compassion. Over time, people will see our true heart. Whether others understand us immediately or not, what matters most is that we keep cultivating ourselves. True harmony does not come from being perfectly understood. It comes from maintaining an upright and peaceful heart even when others cannot yet see our sincerity. We are all surrounded by negative thinking people at times, especially during difficult periods, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Negative-minded people often carry their negativity wherever they go. They spread their negative emotions to others and drain our positive energy, slowing down our progress and motivation. If you ever find yourself in this situation, it is important to learn how to keep a healthy distance from such people. Once, a man was going to the railway station in an auto rickshaw. The driver was driving calmly and comfortably when suddenly a car sped out of a parking lot and cut right in front of them. The auto driver managed to brake just in time, narrowly avoiding an accident. But the car driver jumped out angrily and started shouting and abusing the auto driver. The fault was with the car driver, not the auto driver. Yet, the auto driver listened very politely to the car driver and even apologized to him with folded hands. Seeing this calm response, the car driver could not continue his abuse and eventually left without another word. Afterward, the passenger in the auto felt puzzled. He thought to himself, it wasn't the auto driver's fault, so why did he apologize? He then asked the driver, why did you apologize to him? You were not at fault. While he was shouting at you, you accepted his anger calmly and even apologized. He was to blame, but you just let him go. Why? Then the auto driver gave a very touching reply to the passenger. Sir, some people are like garbage trucks. They carry a lot of garbage in their minds. They keep collecting things that are not needed in life: anger, hatred, worry, despair, and so on. When their garbage becomes too much, they look for an opportunity to dump it on others so they can feel lighter. That's why I keep my distance from such people. I just smile and say goodbye from a distance. Because if I accept the garbage they throw at me, then I too will become a garbage truck. And I'll start throwing that same garbage onto the people around me. I think life is beautiful, so I am thankful to those who treat me well, and I keep my distance from those who do not. Not all mentally troubled people are found in hospitals. Many are walking around us every day. If a field is not planted with good seeds, nature will soon fill it with weeds and wild grass. Similarly, if our mind is not filled with positive thoughts, it will naturally be filled with negative ones. That's why I always try to plant beautiful and uplifting thoughts in my mind. I also try to keep a distance from people who carry negative thoughts and emotions. A happy person shares happiness, and an unhappy person shares sorrow. A wise person shares wisdom, and a confused person shares illusions. A radiant person illuminates others as well. We simply share what we have. Therefore, to protect ourselves, we should keep a distance from negative thinking people. Stay away from them, because living with people who harbor negativity can profoundly influence our own thoughts. Such people emit negative vibes, and if we spend time with them, it can be very difficult to maintain a positive mindset. To preserve our positivity, we must distance ourselves from negative thinking individuals. Surround yourself with friends who give off positive energy. The temple is a place filled with positive energy, so visit it often. There we can bask in the light and blessings of gods and Buddhas. It's the best way to recharge our positive energy. Be a good person and treat others kindly, and most people will treat us kindly in return. If some don't treat us well, introspect and see if there was any miscommunication. If so, be kind and patient and work to improve the communication. If not, it is probably due to bad karma, and we may shift to a positive mindset and think it is time to repay it, to eliminate the negative influence. We have completed Chapter 8. This chapter explores the fifth step, self-cultivation, and the sixth step, regulating the family. Of the 8 steps of learning in detail, the phrase, governing the state lies in regulating the family, means there has never been one who fails to educate their own family, yet succeeds in educate others. Therefore, a junzi, a person of virtue, can extend their teachings throughout the state without even leaving their home. The Great Learning tells us, governing the state lies in regulating the family. This means that those who cannot properly guide and educate their own family will not be able to guide others well. True influence begins from within, from how we live, how we treat those closest to us, and how we set an example at home. In modern life, we often focus on external success, our careers, our social status, or public image. Yet if our relationships at home are full of conflict, disrespect, or neglect, can we really say we are leading well? A person who brings harmony to their family naturally cultivates patience, empathy, and understanding, the qualities that also make a good leader in society. Just as a tree grows strong from its roots, a person's moral strength grows from their family. If we can guide our families with care, honesty, and love, that same spirit will naturally extend to our communities and even to the whole nation. Thus, true governance begins not in the office or the court, but at home through daily acts of respect and virtue. Marriage is not just a bond between two people who love each other. It also marks the beginning of a new relationship with your in-laws. Once you are married, you are also becoming part of your spouse's family, and you need to develop some kind of relationship with them. Once, there was a girl who got married and lived with her husband, her mother-in-law, and her grandmother-in-law. She saw her grandmother-in-law being insulted, disrespected, and both physically and emotionally abused by her mother-in-law every day. The girl felt deeply troubled by this and sympathized with her grandmother-in-law. However, she thought, if I tell my mother-in-law that she is not treating grandmother-in-law well, she might feel that I'm trying to teach her how to behave. Even though I just joined the family, she could get angry at me. So, she chose not to say anything to her mother-in-law, but came up with a clever idea instead. Every day after coming home from work, she would sit by her grandmother-in-law and massage her feet. However, this gesture made her mother-in-law very upset. One day, the mother-in-law asked the girl, "Why do you always sit there?" The girl replied, "My father used to tell me that I should always sit near the elders to learn knowledge and customs from them. Every family has its own customs. So I need to learn the customs of this family from my grandmother-in-law. That's why I asked her how my mother-in-law served you." Then the mother-in-law asked, "So, what did the old woman say?" The girl said, "She said that if nobody abused her, she would be happy." The mother-in-law asked, "Will you treat me the same way?" The girl replied, "My father wants me to always follow the customs of the elders." The mother-in-law began to feel very scared. She thought, whatever I do to my mother-in-law, the same will happen to me in the future. Another day, the mother-in-law saw some disposable bowls gathered in a corner of the house. She asked the girl, "Why did you collect all these bowls here?" The girl replied, "You use disposable bowls to give food to my grandmother-in-law, so I have to collect them now." The mother-in-law asked, "Will you give me food in disposable bowls?" The girl replied, "My father said that in my in-law's house, I should follow their customs." The mother-in-law said, But this is not the custom. The girl asked, then why do you give food in disposable bowls to my grandmother-in-law? The mother-in-law said, because I don't want to wash the utensils. The girl said, no problem. I will wash the utensils. Still another day, while the girl was washing clothes, she noticed that her grandmother-in-law's clothes were very old and dirty. She then began collecting old and dirty clothes every day. The mother-in-law asked, what are you doing? The girl replied, I am saving clothes for the elders for the future. The mother-in-law said, that's different. I never gave my mother-in-law old clothes like this. Clothes get old and dirty over time. The girl asked, then can we replace the old and dirty clothes with new ones now? The mother-in-law said, yes, you can change them. Immediately, the girl replaced her grandmother-in-law's old clothes, bed sheets, and blankets, everything. Since the girl came to the house, the grandmother-in-law's life greatly improved thanks to her cleverness. When we try to change someone, we often lead with our own perspective, thinking only about what they need to do to change. However, it's best not to get angry. Harmless solutions can emerge when we take a step back and try to understand their perspective. Changing a person is difficult, and arguing or fighting alone usually won't work. If the girl had given complete instructions to her mother-in-law, do you think the mother-in-law would have obeyed? Words don't always have an effect, but actions do. If we know how to act persuasively and do so in the right way, we have a much higher chance of successfully convincing others. Tao gives us this wisdom, helping us stay calm and wise to find good solutions so that we can bring happiness to everyone. Filial piety toward one's parent is the foundation for serving one's ruler. Fraternal respect toward one's elder brothers is the foundation for serving one's elders. Loving kindness toward the younger is the foundation for governing the people. The announcement to Kang says, love the people as one would protect an infant child. If one pursues this goal sincerely, even if it is not fully attained, it will not be far off. Basically, no woman learned to raise children before marriage. This part of the great learning reminds us that moral cultivation begins in our closest relationships. Filial piety toward our parents teaches us gratitude and respect, and these same virtues become the foundation for serving our leaders with loyalty. Respect for our elder siblings teaches us humility and harmony, and it prepares us to serve our seniors in society. Showing loving kindness toward the younger trains us in care and responsibility, which later become essential in guiding others. The text quotes, love the people as one would protect an infant child. This means true leadership comes from compassion, not control. A leader who cares for the people, as a parent cares for a child, will naturally earn their trust and respect. In modern life, we can see this principle in action at work or in school. A good manager doesn't command with authority alone, but leads with understanding and care. A teacher who truly cares about students inspires them more deeply than one who only enforces rules. Just as no woman learns to raise children before marriage, our ability to guide others also grows naturally from practicing love, respect, and responsibility in daily life. A mother asked her 5-year-old son, if we go out and both of us get thirsty, but you happen to have 2 apples in your school bag, what would you do? The son tilted his head, thought for a moment, and then said, I would bite both apples. As you can imagine, the mother was very disappointed. But instead of scolding her son, she gently touched his little face and asked, can you tell mommy why you want to do that? The son blinked and said innocently, "Because I want to give the sweetest one to my mommy." All of a sudden, the mother's eyes filled with tears. When you are angry, stop and start listening to each other. When you are sad, listen and find out why your heart is hurt. Listening to yourself and to others is a gentle but powerful ability. This story reminds us that what we see is not always the truth. When the mother saw her son bite both apples, she immediately assumed he was being selfish. Yet, the boy's heart was pure. He only wanted to find out which apple was sweeter to give to his mother. This simple story teaches us the importance of patience and understanding before we judge others. In life, misunderstandings often arise not from bad intentions, but from quick assumptions. At work, at home, or among friends, how often do we get upset before we take time to listen? When we pause and open our hearts to understand others, we may discover kindness hidden behind actions that seem wrong. Listening is more than hearing words. It is feeling the heart behind them. When we truly listen, we build trust, heal relationships, and create harmony. So, the next time you feel disappointed or angry, take a breath, listen, and seek the truth beneath the surface. Compassion begins with understanding. If a ruler's family practices benevolence will prevail throughout the state. If a ruler's family practices courtesy will prevail throughout the state. If a ruler is greedy and violent, the state will fall into chaos. Such is the pivotal influence. Thus it is said, one word may ruin an affair, and one person may stabilize a state. This passage from the Great Learning teaches us that the character of a leader determines the character of the nation. When a ruler's family lives with benevolence, the spirit of kindness spreads throughout society. When they act with courtesy and respect, the people naturally follow their example. But if the ruler is selfish and violent, chaos will surely follow. This is the power of moral influence, what Confucius called the pivot of the state. In modern life, this idea still holds true. In a company, if the boss is honest and caring, the employees tend to work with integrity and teamwork. But if the leader is arrogant or unfair, the whole organization becomes tense and divided. Similarly, in a family, parents' words and actions shape the behavior of their children. That is why Confucius said, one word may ruin an affair, and one person may stabilize a state. A true leadership begins not with power, but with virtue. When a leader governs with kindness, sincerity, and fairness, their influence becomes a living example that guides everyone around them toward harmony and goodness. Once, a student invited me to an auto show. As I walked, I saw a car with a very eye-catching appearance. The salesman was trying hard to explain, from the performance and structure of the car to the appearance and space design. It was amazing! At this time, someone asked, "How much is this car?" The salesman replied, $3 million. Hearing the price, many people couldn't believe it, shook their heads and walked away. But I gave the thumbs up and said, "It's not expensive. It's not expensive." A gentleman next to me opened his eyes and asked, "Sir, can you afford it?" I replied honestly, "I can't afford it either, but look at this car. It's solid outside and fully equipped and luxury inside. Although the price is high, it's worth it. So I cannot say it's expensive." The salesman felt that he met a friend who knew how to appreciate the car, opened the door with a smile, and invited me to say, "Professor Lee, I don't usually do this, but today would you like to come up and see it? Your students can come together too." As a result, we happily got into this luxury cars, which were spacious, comfortable, well equipped, and meticulous in detail, and it was an eye-opening experience to all of us. Then not only did I say it is not expensive, but others also said, "It's not expensive. It's really not expensive." I often tell my students, say good words is not to abuse others. Use good things is not to abuse yourself. Expensive and cheap are just a feeling that shouldn't be affected by your purchasing power. Be objective, respect the object of discussion, and simply evaluate the value of the item itself. We cannot have the mentality of the poor, nor the mentality of the rich. In other words, you can't say it is valuable when you see things because you don't have money, nor can't say it is not valuable simply because you have a lot of money. In everything we do, of course, we should do our best to strive for perfection till the end, but there is no need to be fault-finding, habitually finds fault, complaints, or objects, especially in a petty way. If you still can't make it perfect, after having done your best, just take it. Most of the perfectionists work hard on exquisiteness. But if they don't understand the philosophy of accommodation and are not flexible, things may not go smooth, and eventually they may get sick due to excessive stress. Most perfectionists work tirelessly on exquisiteness, yet if they lack the wisdom of accommodation and the ability to be flexible, things will not go smoothly, and in the end, they may even fall ill from excessive stress. Accommodation means knowing how to follow the natural course of things at any time and under any circumstance, allowing you to be easygoing and not overly attached to specific people, things, or moments. However, those who compromise too easily may lack principles and forget their original intentions when faced with challenges. I get sick due to excessive stress. If you are perfunctory by nature, it will be difficult for you to break through and reach a higher level. You may find yourself making no real progress throughout your life. We must learn to discern when to hold firm and when to be flexible and accommodating. This is true wisdom, when you can strike the right balance between persistence and adaptability in any situation. You will be able to get along well with others and find success in whatever you do. Yao Shun led the world with benevolence, and the people followed their example. Jie Zhou led the world with violence, and the people followed their example. Should a ruler's commands contradict their own preferences, the people will not obey. This passage from the Great Learning emphasizes the power of example in leadership. When rulers like Yao Shun governed with benevolence, their kindness inspired the people to follow willingly. In contrast, tyrants like Jie Zhou ruled with violence, and the people mirrored their cruelty, leading to disorder. The lesson is clear: a leader's personal conduct sets the tone for the entire society. Even today, this principle holds true. In the workplace, a manager who treats employees fairly and with respect inspires loyalty, dedication, and cooperation. Conversely, a manager who punishes arbitrarily or acts out of selfishness creates fear, resentment, and chaos. Similarly, in families, children often imitate their parents' behavior, showing compassion, honesty, and diligence if modeled, or acting selfishly and dishonestly if those qualities are absent. The text also warns that if a ruler's commands contradict their own character, people will not obey. Words alone are not enough. Consistency between what we say and how we act is crucial. Leadership, whether of a state, a company, or a family, relies on integrity and example. True influence begins with aligning our actions with the virtues we wish to see in others. Therefore, a Junzi demands others to do good only after they can do, and not to do bad only after he doesn't do. No one who fails to embody the way of Shu, The principle of not treating others as one wouldn't like to be treated can truly educate others. Therefore, governing country lies in the regulation of the family. This passage from the Great Learning teaches that true leadership and moral guidance begin with oneself. A junzi, or person of virtue, does not demand others to act rightly unless they themselves are capable of doing so. Likewise, they do not forbid wrong behavior unless they themselves refrain from it. Integrity is not about words or rules. It is about embodying the principles we wish to see in others. The text emphasizes the Confucian principle of shu, often expressed as do not do to others what you would not want done to yourself. Without practicing this in daily life, one cannot genuinely teach or guide others. This idea extends to governance. A state cannot be well ordered if its leaders do not first cultivate virtue within themselves and their families. As the text reminds us, governing a country begins with regulating the family. In modern life, this principle is equally relevant. A teacher, manager, or parent who acts with honesty, respect, and fairness naturally inspires the same behavior in students, employees, or children. Words alone are ineffective. Example is powerful. Leadership, influence, and education all begin with living the values we expect from others. A piglet, a sheep, and a cow were kept in the same corral. One day, the shepherd caught the piglet, and it squealed loudly, struggling with all its might. The sheep and the cow disliked its noise and said, "The shepherd often catches us, but we never cry out like that." Hearing this, the piglet replied, "It's completely different. When they catch you, it's only for your wool or milk, but when they catch me, it's to kill and eat me." It is difficult for people in different positions and circumstances to truly understand each other's feelings. Therefore, we should never gloat over others' misfortunes, frustrations, or pain. Instead, we should learn to be caring, understanding, and compassionate. In the Great Learning, Confucius taught the way of shu, to treat others as we wish to be treated, and not to do to others what we would not want done to ourselves. This story reminds us to put ourselves in others' shoes. Whether at home, at school, or at work, true empathy allows us to build harmony. When we practice shu, we don't just understand others, we connect hearts. And that is the beginning of true virtue. The Book of Odes says, "Peach trees are so delicate and beautiful, and their leaves so lush and green. There is a maiden whose virtue is as pure as the peach blossom. After marrying into her husband's family, she will bring harmony to the whole household. Only when one can bring harmony to one's household can one then guide and educate the people of the country." The Book of Odes also says, "A ruler should bring harmony among his brothers. Only when harmony prevails among brothers can one then guide and educate the people of the country." This and previous passages from the Great Learning quotes two poems from the Book of Odes. There is a maiden whose virtue is as pure as the peach blossom. After marrying into her husband's family, she will bring harmony to the whole household. And a ruler should bring harmony among his brothers. The first verse praises a woman whose gentle virtue brings peace and unity to her new family. The second verse praises the harmony among brothers. These messages extend beyond family life. They tell us that harmony begins in the smallest circle of relationships and then expands outward to more people and eventually to society. Only those who can maintain harmony within their families can extend that spirit to governing a state or leading a community. In modern life, we see this truth in action. A person who handles family relationships with patience, respect, And kindness will also bring the same harmony to their workplace or social circle. Whether in a home, school, or company, peace and order are built upon understanding and cooperation. When each of us cultivates harmony in our own family, we contribute to a more peaceful and caring society. True leadership, therefore, begins with love and respect at home. The Book of Us further says, when a ruler's demeanor is upright and flawless, he can rectify the people in all directions. This is because, whether as a father, a son, an elder brother, or a younger brother, his behavior serves as a true model for others, and the people in all directions will naturally follow his example. Thus, the governance of a country begins with the regulation of the family. This passage from the Great Learning quotes, the Book of Os, when a ruler's demeanor is upright and flawless, he can rectify the people in all directions. This means that a leader's personal conduct sets the moral tone for everyone under their influence. When a ruler or any person in a position of responsibility acts with honesty, fairness, and integrity, others will naturally follow their example. Confucius reminds us that true leadership is not about giving orders, but about being a living example of virtue. Whether as a father, a son, an elder brother, or a younger brother, our actions constantly influence those around us. When our hearts are sincere and our behavior upright, that goodness spreads like light, first to our family, then to our community, and eventually throughout society. In modern life, this truth is timeless. A teacher who leads by example earns the respect of students. A manager who acts with integrity inspires trust among employees. A parent who lives with honesty and kindness shapes children's character more deeply than words ever could. Thus, the governance of a nation and the harmony of society truly begins with the virtue cultivated within one's own family. A monk and a soap maker were walking together one day. The soap maker never stopped talking, while the monk just listened. The soap maker asked the monk, "What is good about religion, preaching, or Buddhist scriptures? Life is full of troubles, thieving, murder, hatred, and much more. Buddhist teachings have been around for more than 2,000 years, but they haven't made life better for everyone. People still fight, hate, and steal." The monk didn't say anything, he just listened. After a while, they passed by a place and saw children playing in the mud. The monk said to the soap maker, "You said soap can make people clean. I do not believe it. Look at these kids, how dirty they are! What is so good about soap? Soap has been around for thousands of years, but even though it is everywhere in the world, the mud still makes these children dirty." The soap maker said, "Master, soap doesn't work unless someone uses it." "Exactly," said the monk. "Soap alone cannot make people clean unless they use it." The same principle applies to the Buddhist scriptures. The teachings in the scriptures cannot change people unless they put those principles into practice. When our heart changes, our attitude changes accordingly. When our attitude changes, our habits change accordingly. When our habits change, when our character changes accordingly. When our character changes, our life changes accordingly. Kowtowing is not merely bending your body, but letting go of arrogance. Chanting Buddha is not merely saying the words, but calming your mind. Putting the palms together is not merely joining your hands, but showing respect for all things. Meditation is not merely sitting for a long time, but emptying your mind. Joy is not merely shown on the face, but found in a broadened mind. Cultivation is not merely about getting rid of desires, but about being selfless in heart. Giving is not merely giving without reservation, but sharing with love. Learning Buddhism is not merely gaining knowledge, but practicing wisdom. Enlightenment is not about seeing the Buddha, but about finally seeing your own true nature. Cultivating Tao is cultivating the mind. When a thought arises in one's mind, whether good or evil, it will bring about a reaction. Just as when you show others a kind face or a harsh one, they will naturally feel it. Merit is a gift we offer to return to heaven and see our heavenly Mater, or God, and good thoughts are the ticket that leads us there. Cultivating Tao can seem either simple or difficult. If you cultivate for the sake of your own true nature, you will have no distractions and will act sincerely and steadily. Then cultivating Tao becomes simple. But if you cultivate for the sake of others' opinions, worrying about gain and loss, it will be difficult and imperfect. When bad karma entangles you, it becomes hard to calm the mind, and the pain can be deep. In such times, besides making amends through merit, qualities like concentration, resilience, and perseverance are essential to overcome the hardship. We have completed Chapter 9. This chapter explores the 6th step, regulating family, and the 7th step, governing country. Of the 8 steps of learning in detail. I will end my speech here. For any mistakes I made, I apologize to God and Buddhas, and your suggestions are welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.